10 years to the day, a new vision of Avatar was revealed to the world, no longer following the adventures, tribulations, joy, and sorrow of The Last Airbender. The lens focuses in on a young woman from the southern reaches of the globe, a hothead youth, a compassionate individual, a legend named Korra. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's a quote from the late, great Maya Angelou, and though it relates to people and human interaction, I believe it also translates to the way that I watch and interact with stories. Some of my friends seem to have a photogenic and audiogenic recall, remembering specific details and moments from childhood television, cinema, and literature. For me, details fall out of my mind pretty quickly. I'm sort of like Dory from Finding Nemo when it comes to interacting with story. I don't know, maybe my mind needs to get checked out and I need to see a doctor, but the point is that, like Maya Angelou said, I don't remember everything a story showed me or told me, but I always remember how a story made me feel. I've not seen the finale of Digimon or remember it in detail at all, but I damn well remember how it broke 10-year-old me down to sobs, forcing younger me to hide tears from my brother who was sitting feet away from me as we watched the last episode. I've not watched a single episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark since I was in elementary school, but I can recall the visceral fear that opening instilled in me just because I knew I was about to watch some creepy stuff. And outside of a few rewatches of the theatrical movie, I've not seen Mighty Morphin Power Rangers since I thought it was a major flex to bring the pizza Lunchables to school. But I still remember the joy and cathartic heroism of the end of each of those early seasons. Same is the case for The Legend of Korra. Now, I watched Legend of Korra when I was much older. I traded my Lunchables at school with Trader Joe's salads in the break room of my retail job as I watched Korra on Nick.com. And my experience with the show was quite private, despite consuming it around dozens of my coworkers. I didn't talk about Korra online like I do now. I wasn't on message boards or social media calculating audience retention and reaction until the later seasons. So there was a large disconnect for me when I saw this vocal outcry against Korra when my memory of it, the way it made me feel, couldn't be more different from those opposed to the story. And it was one of the very first episodes that best highlights what I enjoyed so much about The Legend of Korra. Hey folks, my name is Antoine Bandele, your resident geek, giving you theories and discussion related to all things Avatar. Today, I wanted to do something special. 10 years ago to the day, The Legend of Korra, the sequel series to Avatar The Last Airbender, rebooted on Nickelodeon. To celebrate this anniversary, I gathered as many Avatar content creators as I could so that we could discuss the most legendary scenes from The Legend of Korra. Together, we all have chosen our favorite scenes from the series, and we would like to share why they were so impactful for us, whether it was a stellar showcase of choreography, a brilliant use of music and theme, or a touching moment between two characters. So join us as we dive into one legendary scene. Early in the show's development, creators Brian Konietzko and Michael DiMartino set out to design a character that was essentially supposed to be anti-Aang. Where Aang was obedient, tolerant, and sometimes submissive, Korra was headstrong, impulsive, and a bit reckless. This is reflected even in the way that they dressed, with Aang sporting robes of a monk and Korra looking like an MMA fighting snowboarder as Konietzko has described her. So we are definitely set up for a different kind of story, which I always appreciated about Korra. For me, the young female avatar tends to be more relatable. The lessons she went through are the same ones that I went through as a teen, whereas with Aang, he's a character meant to be admired and aspired to. But with Korra being set up as a hothead, that would mean we would get different kinds of storylines we have not yet experienced in the world of Avatar. For example, this tends to get overlooked by those who favor Airbender and Korra both, but Korra should have potentially been way more messed up in the head than she is depicted in the show. For her entire childhood, she was sequestered within a small compound within the Southern Water Tribe territories. From what we can tell, the only people she interacted with were the White Lotus trainers and masters, but hardly anyone her own age. The early episodes touch on this a bit, but that goes away quite quickly and never gets explored all that much. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that Korra is actually quite well adjusted considering her upbringing, which is a positive mark on her personality, which is often simplified to just a hothead. And the second episode of her series, I feel, did a great job at establishing the kinds of stories we could get from a character like her. A character who was naturally good at the physical aspects of bending, but struggled with her own spirituality. Almost the opposite of what Aang went through with Toph when he first trained with her in earthbending. So from the jump, we get the perfect example of Korra as the annoying, rebellious teenager when she is tasked by her new airbending master, Tenzin, to complete a 2,000-year-old exercise designed by the ancient air nomads. And of course, Korra fails hard because she doesn't listen and tries to punch her way out of the situation. The exercise is designed to teach Korra how to find the paths of least resistance, just like a leaf in the wind, because not all conflicts can be taken head-on with a fight, but through a delicate negotiation of an ebb and flow. And Korra takes her resistance against Master Tenzin a step further by outright neglecting her training in favor of pro bending, a new sport created within Republic City. And this again is another example of how I can relate to Korra. I have often been disobedient to the status quo or my elders who I felt were living in the past. Tenzin only teaches Korra with ancient texts and traditional air nomad techniques, being just as stubborn as Korra instead of practicing what he actually preaches. Just as Korra was defiant against the airbending exercise, not listening to why the path of least resistance could benefit her, Tenzin himself was not open to molding his teachings around Korra either. When the notion of pro bending comes up, especially when Korra brings up how evolved the bending arts have become because of the mix and matching of the sport, Tenzin turns his nose up at it in favor of dated tradition. To say the least, neither master nor student found themselves on the right path, the path to balance. Before I get into my next section of this video, I have a confession to make. I'm sort of a sucker for sports movies, tropes and all. Romance fans always love their happy endings, buddy cops always need the main character to get suspended from the force, and sports movies always have the underdog come back from the brink, even if they don't win. So keeping that in mind, the whole setup for this episode is sort of a duh for me in terms of my sensibilities as a consumer of entertainment. Even with Korra going on her own way and doing the whole pro-bending thing without Tenzin's permission, she's still super terrible, getting pummeled by benders who should be far beneath her, but since she's confined by the rules of the game, she has to change tack. And thus, possibly my favorite moment in the entire show happens here. Korra substitutes for the Fire Ferret's pro-bending team, which includes the firebender Mako and the earthbender Bolin. But Korra just can't get her head around the game and gets bullied by the other team. Mako and Bolin get pinned by the opposing team's waterbender, leaving Korra to fend for herself. With nowhere to hide, no options to just bull rush her way through the situation thanks to the rules of pro bending, Korra is forced to finally become the leaf, as Tenzin had showed her. It's such a simple sequence, but done so well. Even now as I record this, I feel myself getting emotional at that moment. I can hear Jeremy Zuckerman's beautiful score, which comes to the forefront of the scene, allowing the diegetic sound to fade into the background as Korra's focus sharpens, as she becomes the leaf in the wind. Korra's spiraling movements, the overhead shots, all of it calls back to the earlier movements that Tenzin's kids made as they glided through the airbending training contraption, providing a neat bow tie to the episode, and more than that, the potential of the entire show. In this simple moment of the typical sports trope, Korra learns and grows, and Tenzin, in the end, sees the benefit of teaching methods outside the ancient texts of his people. Both sides of the coin, Korra's and Tenzin's, were right on some level, just as they were wrong on some level. And what neither of them achieved was balance, the overarching theme of the entire Avatar franchise. But without them being resistant to one another, the ultimate lesson would not be as sweet. And that is sort of the secret sauce of Korra the character. Korra takes time to learn her lessons, even as audiences scream at her that she's making the wrong decision. But if she made some of those decisions quickly or went along with the crowd, those lessons would ring hollow. Korra shows she has something to teach, not only to Tenzin, but to us the viewers as well. But she also showcases the importance of balance in a way that touches me more deeply as a viewer. Yes, it's well and good to have someone like Avatar Aang who displays balance, but he often did it through moral platitudes rather than practical application or stumbling his way to get to the answer. And that could be the major reason why some fans were disappointed by Korra as a character and as a series. To me, this storyline in the second episode of the entire series is pitch perfect and a fantastic setup for the kinds of stories that can be told with a character like Korra. A character who dipped for me in her second season, but climbed back up in book 3 and especially book 4 of her series. She's the kid who always got knocked down, the kid who had something to prove, the kid living under someone else's shadow, but she always got back up to fight. It's that resiliency that has always drawn me to Avatar Korra, and I find her best culmination of character was when she was simply being a leaf in the wind. And that's it. Thanks for watching as I stumbled through one of my favorite scenes of The Legend of Korra. I don't typically do video essays, that's not really my jam, but I tried my best on this one. The Legend of Korra is a series that has stuck with me for quite a while, as a lot of you know, with me covering it for years on this channel. But now I want to turn the question to you. What is your one legendary scene? You can leave your response in the comments below, but if you want brownie points, you can totally make your own video and send it to me so we can celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Legend of Korra together. I can't wait to see what some of your favorites are in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more Avatar content just like this. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.